What does this day have to do with us? Well, we live in a degree of comfort with violence. We consume it as entertainment, as daily news. It exists in homes that we know nothing about. Around the world, people are persecuted for their faith. But this happens far away. Disappointment is not the same as persecution. We, or many of us, have benefited from the colonial systems of empire that rained violence and oppression down on people. All that Jesus worked towards, the coming of the kingdom, to seek justice. That has everything to do with us. The way we value the life of another person, the way we value the life that belongs to another, today has everything to do with you and me. Fear and fascination drew observers to the first Holy Friday. And these emotions have attracted people ever since. We cannot flee from the pain and the suffering that Jesus experienced. And we wonder, each time this day rolls around, why would one so faithful and so loving have to face the agony of death and rejection? Jesus was wounded by the transgressions of humanity, bruised and beaten by the iniquities that we are still familiar with. On this day, we remember and we come before all that pain and cruelty, and we acknowledge our own involvement in the suffering of the world. Today, our faithfulness will be tested, and our lives will be judged by the faithfulness of our response. Please pray with me. God of the hills and of the low places, you revealed yourself on that mountain. And you are the one who reassures us in the valley of the shadow of death. We need you right here and right now. As we live in the uncertainty and disappointment of this day, God, we need you. You created us and gave life to all things, and we have always chased after other gods. We've made fun of those who practice their faith too seriously, and we have tried many times to put you to the test, refusing to be tested ourselves. We place conditions on what we believe and on what we understand to be worthy of love. We limit our trust and our faith in you. While Jesus, the one who was sent to love the world, was rejected, tortured, and killed, what have we done? Is it too late today to become a follower? Is it too late to believe? Hear our cry this day, God, and in your mercy, answer our prayers. This morning I offer you words of forgiveness and freedom. God's love cannot be destroyed. That's not how God works. We cannot diminish or interfere with God's saving power. And God reaches out to heal, to revive, and to reveal to us again and again that this love will not let us go. You are invited again today to know that one that is beyond all knowing, to accept the precious gift of love and life that are yours if you want them. Answer God's love with your love, with your praise and devotion and service to others. And know that you live as forgiven and beloved people of God. I share with you the story of the Passion that comes from the Gospel of Mark. When they had sung the hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives, and Jesus said to them, "You shall become deserters, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will scatter. But after I am raised, I will go before you to Galilee." And Peter said to him, "Even though all become deserters, I will not desert you." And Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this day, this very night, before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. But he said vehemently, "Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you." And all of them said the same. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took with him Peter and James and John and began to be distressed and agitated. And people said to them, "I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and keep awake." And going a little farther, he threw himself on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, this hour might pass from him. He said, "Father, for you all things are possible. Remove this cup from me. Yet not what I want, but what you want." He came and found them sleeping, and he said to Peter and Simon, "Are you asleep? Could you not keep awake for 1 hour? Keep awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." And again he went away and prayed, saying the same words. And once more he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy, and they did not know what to say to him. He came a 3rd time. "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Enough. The hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up. Let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand."
Still on the road.
continuing to read the story from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 14, verse 43. Immediately, while he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived with him. There was a crowd, and they had swords and clubs, from the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying this, "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard." So when he came, he went up to kiss him, and he said, "Rabbi," and kissed him. Then they laid hands on him and arrested him. But one of those who stood near drew his sword and struck the slave of the high priest, cutting off his ear. And Jesus said to them, "Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as though I were a bandit? And day after day I was with you in the temple teaching, and you did not arrest me. Let the scriptures be fulfilled." And all of them deserted him and fled.
Go to darkest Gethsemane, you that feel the tempter's power. Your Redeemer's conflict see. Watch with him one bitter hour. Turn not from his grief away. Learn from him to watch and pray. See him at the judgment hall, beaten, bound, reviled, arrayed. See him meekly bearing all, love to all his soul sustain. Shun not suffering, shame, or loss. Learn from Christ to bear the cross. Calvary's mournful mountain view, there the Lord of glory see. Made a sacrifice for you, dying on the accuser's tree. It is finished, he is cried. Trust in Christ and learn to die.
They took Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests and elders and the scribes were assembled. And Peter had followed him at a distance right into the courtyard of the high priest, and was sitting with the guards, warming himself by a fire. Now the chief priests and the whole council were looking for testimony against Jesus to put him to death, but they found none. For many gave false testimony against him, and their testimony did not agree. Some stood up and gave false testimony against him, saying, "We heard him say, 'I will destroy the temple that is made with his own hands, and in 3 days I will build another, not made with hands.' But even on this point their testimony did not agree. Then the high priest stood up before them and said to Jesus, 'Have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you?' But he was silent and did not give a response. And again the high priest asked, 'Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?' Jesus said, 'I am. And you will see the Son of Man and coming with the clouds in heaven.' Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, 'Why do we still need witnesses? You have heard this blasphemy. What is your decision?' And then all of them condemned him as deserving death. Some began to spit on him and blindfold him and strike him, saying, 'Prophesy.' The guards also took him over and beat him. While Peter was below in a courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came by. When she saw Peter warming himself, she stared at him and said, "You also were with Jesus, the man from Nazareth." But he denied it, saying, "I don't know or understand what you're talking about." And he went out into the forecourt, and the cock crowed. And the servant girl, on seeing him again, began to say to the bystanders, "This man is one of them." But again he denied it. And then after a little while, the bystanders again said to Peter, "Certainly you are one of them, for you are a Galilean." But he began to curse, and he swore an oath, "I do not know this man you are talking about." And at that moment the cock crowed a second time, and Peter remembered what Jesus had said to him. "Before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." And he broke down and wept.
Bitter was the night, thought the cock would crow forever. Bitter was the night, before the break of day. Saw you passing by, told them all I didn't know you. Bitter was the night, before the break of day. Told them all a lie, told it 3 times over. Bitter was the night, before the break of day. What did Judas do? Sold him for a bag of silver. Bitter was the night, before the break of day. What did Judas do? Hang himself upon an altar. Bitter was the night, before the break of day. Bitter was the night, thought there'd never be a morning. Bitter was the night, before the break of day. Bitter was the night, thought the cock would crow forever. Bitter was the night, before the break of day.
As soon as it was morning, the chief priests held a consultation with the elders and the scribes and the whole council. They bound Jesus and led him away and handed him over to Pilate. Pilate asked, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered him, "You say so." Then the chief priests accused him of many things. Pilate asked him again, "Have you no answer? See how many charges they bring against you." But Jesus made no further reply, so that Pilate was amazed. Now for the festival, he used to release a prisoner for them, anyone whom they asked. And there was a man called Barabbas, who was in prison with the rebels who had committed murder during an insurrection. So the crowd came and began to ask Pilate to do for them according to this custom. Then he answered them, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" For he realized that it was out of jealousy that the chief priest had handed him over. But the chief priest stirred up the crowd to have him release Barabbas for them instead of Jesus. Pilate spoke to them again. "Then what do you wish me to do with this man that you call the king of the Jews?" And the crowd began to shout back, "Crucify him." Pilate asked them, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him!" So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas for them. And after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified. The soldiers led him into the courtyard of the palace, and this is the governor's headquarters, and they called together a whole cohort. Then they clothed him in a purple cloak, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on his head. And they began to salute him, "Hail, the King of the Jews." They struck his head with a reed, and they spit on him, and they knelt down to pay homage to him. After this mocking, they stripped him of the purple cloak. They put his own clothes on him, and they led him out to be crucified.
In the quiet curve of evening, in the sinking of the days, in the silky void of darkness, you are there. In the lapses of my breathing, in the space between my waves, in the crater of my sadness, you are there. You are there. You are there. You are there. In the rest beyond the phrases, in the cracks between the stars, in the gaps between the meaning, you are there. In the melting down of endings, in the cooling of the sun, in the solstice of the winter, you are there. You are there. You are there. You are there. In the mystery of my hungers, in the silence of my rooms, in the cloud of my unknowing, you are there. In the empty cave of grieving, in the desert of my dreams, in the tunnel of my sorrow, you are there. You are there. You are there. You are there.
They compelled a passerby who was coming in from the country to carry his cross. This was Simon of Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus. Then they brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull, and they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, and he did not take it. And they crucified him and divided his clothes among each other, casting lots to decide what each would take. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him, and the inscription on the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." And with him they crucified 2 bandits, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying, "Aha! You who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from that cross." In the same way, the chief priests, along with the scribes, were also mocking him, saying among themselves, he saved others and he cannot save himself. Let the Messiah, this King of Israel, come down from that cross so that we may see and believe. Those who were crucified with him also taunted him. When it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Then some of the bystanders heard what he said, and they said, "Listen, he is calling for Elijah." Some ran, filled a sponge with sour wine, and put it on a stick and gave it to him to drink, saying, "Wait, let's see whether Elijah will come and take him down." Then Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed at last. And the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. Now when the centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way he breathed his last, he said, "Truly, this man was the Son of God." There were also women looking on from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, the younger of Jose and Salome. These used to follow him and provide for him when he was in Galilee, and there were many other women who had come up to be with him in Jerusalem. When the evening had come, and since it was the day of preparations, that is, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea, a respected member of the council who was also himself waiting expectantly for the kingdom of God, went boldly to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate wondered if he was already dead. He summoned the centurion, and he asked him whether he had been dead for some time. When he learned from the centurion that he was dead, he granted the body to Joseph. Then Joseph brought a linen cloth, and taking down the body, wrapped it in the linen, and laid it in a tomb that had been hewn out of the rock. He then rolled a stone against the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, saw where the body had been laid. God, it is true that we are not at all worthy of your love. We promise to be faithful and then we fall away. We forsake you. We betray you. We run away and pretend we don't know you. We watch from far away without getting involved. We don't tell anyone that we actually do want to believe that you are the one who makes us whole. We are afraid. Change us this day, we pray.